I'm Haley B. Miller, and this is Ohio Politics Explained, a podcast where you give us 15 minutes and we give you all the news you need to sound smart and impress your friends. Welcome back to Ohio Politics Explained, and happy day after the primary. Ohio's big races for November are set after voters made their picks for governor, U.S. Senate, Secretary of State, and other key positions. Some of the primaries were just a formality, but a couple of them were quite competitive. Laura Bischoff is here to help me walk you through it.
Hello, hello.
The marquee race was the GOP primary for governor, even though it wasn't much of a contest. Vivek Ramaswamy defeated his lesser-known challenger, as expected, and will face Amy Acton in November. Former Senator Sherrod Brown also cleared an easy primary hurdle, setting up his race against Senator John Husted. How are Republicans and Democrats feeling about these races?
Well, I would say that Republicans are a little more nervous than they'd normally be in statewide elections because the polls show that the race between Sherrod Brown and John Husted and the race between Vivek Ramaswamy and Amy Acton is, pretty competitive, which is surprising given that Ohio is a pretty red state now, one that Donald Trump won 3 times, including the last time by 11 points.
Yeah, and this is going to be a tough year for Republicans, especially nationally. Trump's approval ratings are quite low. There's a lot of frustration over the economy, cost of living. The war in Iran, at least for now, is continuing and is not popular. And certainly the impact it's having on gas prices is really not popular. I don't know if Ramaswamy is going to feel the effects of that as much as Husted will, since Husted is the one in Washington right now. But, I feel like Ohio has seen dynamics like this before, and it hasn't necessarily gone well for Republicans.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the old saying of it's the economy, stupid. These are economic issues that will be weighing on voters' minds. I will say that although the polls are close, the general election is months away and millions to go. We're going to see an enormous amount of money spent trying to persuade voters one way or another.
Yeah, for sure. It's a lifetime from now. Now, I want to give some love to the down ticket primaries because they were more interesting in some ways. Let's start with Ohio Supreme Court. What do those races look like after yesterday?
So Dan Hawkins was unopposed. He's going to go up against Marilyn Zayas, who is the Democratic challenger, an appellate court judge in the 1st District down in Cincinnati. And then in the second race, Jennifer Bruner, who is the only Democrat to hold statewide elected office in Ohio right now. She will be challenged by Colleen O'Donnell, who won a 4-way GOP primary that kind of was a nail-biter on election night. O'Donnell is the daughter of a retired justice on the Supreme Court, Terrence O'Donnell. She's a former Franklin County Common Pleas Court judge, and she narrowly won a victory, I think maybe 2 or 3 percentage points over Andrew King, another appellate court judge. There were 3 appellate court judges and O'Donnell in that race.
I feel like state Supreme Court races don't always get the most attention, but what do you feel like the stakes are for it this year, especially when, as you noted, there's only one Democrat on the bench and could be 0 by the end of the year?
Yeah, the legislature added partisan labels to appellate and Supreme Court races a few years ago. And since they did that, the Democrats have not won any of the Supreme Court races. The Democrats have not held a majority on the Ohio Supreme Court, I think, since 1986. And going 7-0, I can't remember the last. It has happened, but I can't remember when the last time that was.
Wow, that's crazy. Last night, we also saw a super competitive primary for treasurer, potentially the least sexy job in state government. It was neck and neck for a while, but former Representative Jay Edwards ended up defeating Senator Christina Rogner. How was Edwards able to pull this off?
It's interesting because he's out of the legislature, and he has ties to Larry Householder, the former Speaker of the House who's now in federal prison. Edwards was his protege and was in on, some of those recorded meetings that the FBI captured on wiretaps. But he had some big endorsements in the race. I think it was J.D. Vance and who else?
Senator Bernie Moreno.
Yeah. And so I think that made a big impact.
Yeah, it's not every day you see a sitting vice president endorse in a state treasurer race, although Vance is obviously an Ohio guy. In other primary news, Democrat John Kulwitz defeated former lawmaker Elliot Forhan for Attorney General and will face Auditor Keith Faber in the fall. We also have our matchup for Secretary of State, Treasurer Robert Sprague and Representative Allison Russo. I think some folks, including me, thought the Democratic primary between Russo and physician Brian Hambly would be closer, but Russo ended up winning handily.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised as well because I think Hambly got into the race even well before Russo did.
Yeah, and he had secured some pretty decent endorsements from former Governor Dick Celeste, Senate Minority Leader Nikki Antonio, but Russo does have some name ID, especially in the Columbus area. She's been in the state legislature for a while, and she ran for Congress in 2021.
That's right.
So consider this your primary highlight reel. For more results and analysis on Tuesday's election and what comes next, check out our websites.